Welcome to Astrid's Tales. Here's today's story. The firing squad didn't line up against a brick wall. They assembled in a glass-walled conference room on a rainy Tuesday morning in November. Armed not with rifles, but with a restructuring flowchart and a bagel platter. My boss, Arthur Miller, stood at the head of the mahogany table, smoothing the lapels of a suit that cost more than my first car. He cleared his throat, a sound that for the last decade had signaled the beginning of a pep talk or a pitch. Today, it signaled the end of my life as I knew it. "We're entering a new era at Miller & Associates," Arthur announced, his gaze sliding over the 20 assembled staff members before resting, briefly and uncomfortably, on me. "To stay competitive, we need to be leaner, more agile. We need fresh perspectives to manage our top-tier portfolio." He gestured to the young man sitting to his right, Tyler, Arthur's 22-year-old nephew. Tyler was wearing loafers without socks and checking a notification on his watch. He had been hired 3 months ago as a junior associate, a role that mostly involved him asking me where the printer paper was kept, and taking 2-hour lunches. Tyler will be stepping up as the lead account executive for the Big Five accounts, Arthur said. The room went silent. The air seemed to be sucked out of the ventilation system. The Big Five were not just accounts. They were the manufacturing giants, the logistics empires, and the tech firms that generated 80% of our revenue. They were the clients I had spent 10 years courting, securing, and servicing. "And Sarah," Arthur continued, finally looking me in the eye with a smile that didn't reach his cold, gray eyes. "You've done a yeoman's job keeping the lights on. But we need you to transition into a support role. You'll stay on as Tyler's senior advisor. You can show him the ropes, handle the administrative side, and ensure a smooth handover." Support role? The words tasted like ash. "Arthur, those are my clients. I know their kids' names. I know their supply chain issues better than their own queues do. Tyler doesn't even know our login protocols." Arthur chuckled, a dismissive sound that echoed in the quiet room. "Don't be emotional, Sarah. You're a great worker, but let's be honest, you're expendable. The brand is what they buy, not the account manager. It's Miller & Associates on the invoice, not Sarah & Associates. Now let's get Tyler set up with the files." He turned away, dismissing a decade of loyalty with a wave of his hand. I sat frozen, the humiliation burning my cheeks. Expendable. The word hung in the air, a toxic cloud. I looked at Tyler, who offered me a smug, half-hearted shrug. "Excited to learn from you, Sarah," he said, his voice dripping with unearned confidence. I didn't flip the table. I didn't scream. I nodded, picked up my notebook, and walked back to my desk. But as I sat down in the mid-level cubicle I had occupied for 10 years, surrounded by the awards and thank you notes from the very clients he had just stolen, something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud break. It was the quiet, dangerous click of a safety being switched off. Arthur thought he had just reorganized his org chart. What he didn't realize was that he had just armed a bomb in the foundation of his own company. And he had forgotten that I was the only one who knew the codes. To understand the magnitude of the betrayal, you have to understand the history. I was employee number 1 at Miller & Associates. 10 years ago, the firm was Arthur, me, and a subleased office that smelled faintly of the dentist's practice next door. I was 24, hungry, and willing to work harder than anyone else. Arthur was the charmer, the face of the operation. He could sell ice to a polar bear, but he couldn't organize a file cabinet to save his life. I was the engine room. While Arthur was out golfing with prospects, I was back at the office drafting the proposals, building the slide decks, and fielding the panic calls at 2 a.m. I worked 60-hour weeks as a standard. I missed my sister's wedding rehearsal dinner to finalize the pitch for Omnicorp, our first major win. I lived on vending machine coffee and the adrenaline of building something from nothing. "We're partners in spirit, Sarah," Arthur used to say, clinking a plastic cup of cheap champagne with me after we landed a deal. "We're building an empire. When we hit the big time, you'll be set for life. I take care of the people who take care of me." I believed him. I invested my youth, my energy, and my talent into his dream, treating it as my own, and we did hit the big time. The 4 clients turned into 40, then 82. We moved from the subleased closet to a gleaming glass tower downtown. The cheap champagne was replaced by vintage scotch. But as the revenue climbed, Arthur changed. The we in his vocabulary was slowly replaced by I. He traded his sensible sedan for a Porsche 911. He started wearing bespoke suits and spending more time at his country club than in the boardroom. The culture shifted with him. He began hiring a specific type of employee, executive VPs, who were inevitably the sons of his golfing buddies or the nephews of his investors. They were polished, loud, and utterly useless. They spent their days in meetings talking about synergy and paradigm shifts, while I was still in the trenches, actually doing the work that paid their inflated salaries. I watched as they were promoted over me, one by one. I swallowed my pride, telling myself that my value was undeniable. I was the reliable foundation, as Arthur liked to call me. I was the one the clients called when things went wrong. I thought that safety was enough. I was wrong. Safety is an illusion when you are building someone else's castle. The weeks following the restructuring were a study in psychological torture. Tyler was exactly as incompetent as I feared. He treated me like his personal secretary. "Sarah, can you forward me the quarterly projections for heavy industry?" he'd ask, not looking up from his phone. Or, "Hey, Sarah, the client is asking about the supply chain disruption in Southeast Asia. Can you draft a response for me to send?" I did it. I drafted the emails. I prepared the reports. I watched him hit send and take credit for my analysis. I sat in meetings where he butchered the pronunciation of key stakeholders' names, and I gently corrected him, smoothing over his mistakes to save the account. Arthur watched this dynamic with approval. "See?" he told me one afternoon, stopping by my desk. "Great teamwork. Tyler is really finding his footing." "He's finding his footing on my back," I wanted to say. Instead, I smiled a tight professional smile. "He's learning, Arthur." But while I was playing the role of the dutiful subordinate, I was also doing something else. I was digging. The incident that sparked my investigation wasn't a slight from Tyler, but a comment from Arthur himself. He had called a meeting to discuss compliance. "We need to make sure everyone has signed the new employment agreements," Arthur said, waving a stack of papers. "Standard stuff. Non-competes, confidentiality." My lawyer looked them over. "Just get them signed by Friday." I remembered signing mine a year ago during a previous smaller shakeup. Arthur was famously cheap. He hated paying for unnecessary overhead, which included everything from quality coffee beans to proper legal counsel. He bragged often about using online templates for contracts to save thousands in legal fees. I went home that night and dug my copy of the agreement out of my filing cabinet. I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of wine and read it. The language seemed dense, full of hereafters and foregoings. It looked intimidating. It explicitly stated that, upon termination or resignation, I was forbidden from working in any related industry for a period of 5 years. 5 years. It was a career death sentence. It was designed to terrify me into submission, but something about the wording felt off. It was clunky, repetitive. I picked up my phone and dialed my brother David. David wasn't a corporate shark. He was a labor lawyer who spent his days fighting for unions and wrongful termination cases. He knew the law, and more importantly, he knew how to spot a bully. "Send it over," he said. I scanned the document and emailed it. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. "Sarah," David said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "Profound incompetence is a beautiful thing. What do you mean?" "Arthur is an idiot," David explained. "He tried to be his own lawyer, or he hired the cheapest one he could find. This non-compete? It's garbage. In our state, you cannot ban an employee from working in any related industry for 5 years. It's overly broad. A judge would throw this out before lunch. It's legally unenforceable." My heart skipped a beat. "So I can work?" You can work wherever you want, David said. But that's not the best part. Read section 4, paragraph B. I looked at the document. It was a jumble of text about intellectual property. He missed a clause, David said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. There is no non-solicitation clause. Non-solicitation? It's the standard clause that says if you leave, you can't take the clients with you. It's the most important part of an employment contract for a firm like yours. And he forgot it. Or he pasted the wrong template. Either way, it's not there. I sat back in my chair, the room spinning slightly. So, I said slowly, testing the weight of the realization. If I leave, you can take every single client you have, David finished. You can call them. You can email them. You can invite them to dinner. You can pitch them your new services. And Arthur Miller cannot do a damn thing about it. I looked at the document again. It wasn't a cage. It was a permission slip. I didn't quit the next day. Rage is a powerful fuel, but patience is a sniper's best weapon. I spent the next 2 weeks being the most helpful senior advisor in the history of Miller and Associates. I organized every file on the shared drive. I updated the contact lists with the personal cell phone numbers of every CEO and decision maker in our portfolio. I created detailed status reports for every project, ensuring that I had a comprehensive, up-to-the-minute map of the entire business. Arthur saw a defeated employee falling in line. Tyler saw a pushover doing his homework. I saw an arsenal being assembled. Behind the scenes, I was making moves. I reached out to Marcus, an old colleague who had left Miller and Associates 3 years ago to start his own boutique firm. Apex Strategy. Marcus was brilliant, honest, and hated Arthur almost as much as I did. We met for coffee in a diner 3 towns over. I'm leaving, I told him. About time, Marcus said. We'd love to have you. I can offer you a senior VP title, decent salary. I don't want a salary, I interrupted. I want a partnership. 50/50ths. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Sarah, you're good, but that's a big ask. I have the big 5, I said calmly. And about 30 mid-tier accounts. I'm bringing 80% of Miller's revenue with me. And my non-compete is a paper tiger. Marcus choked on his coffee. You're serious? Dead serious. They trust me, Marcus. They stay because of me. If I tell them I'm moving to a firm that actually values the work, they'll follow. I've already felt out a few of them. The dissatisfaction with Arthur's new VPs is high. Marcus extended his hand across the table. Welcome to Apex, partner. We spent the next week drafting the paperwork. We prepared transfer of representation forms. We built a landing page on the Apex website specifically for the onboarding of Miller clients. We were ready. The day I pulled the trigger was a Friday. Arthur, in a fit of oblivious grandeur, had called a team-building lunch at a steakhouse near the office. Attendance was mandatory. We sat around a long table, the air thick with forced conviviality. Arthur stood up to give a toast, holding a glass of expensive Cabernet. To the future. He boomed, his face flushed. To the new structure working so well. I want to give a special shout out to Tyler. He clapped a hand on his nephew's shoulder. Tyler grinned, looking like a frat boy who had just successfully hazed a pledge. Tyler is the engine of this new era, Arthur declared. He's got the vision. And let's not forget Sarah. He pointed his glass at me. Sarah is the grease. She keeps the machine running so the engine can perform. The table chuckled politely. Grease. I was the grease. Dirty, necessary, invisible, and easily wiped away. I looked at Arthur. I looked at Tyler. I looked at the Porsche keys sitting on the table next to Arthur's plate. Thank you, Arthur, I said, my voice steady. That's a perfect analogy. I didn't finish my salad. I waited until the main courses arrived, steaks for the men, salads for the support staff, and then excused myself. I just need to check on the Omnicorp file, I lied. I'll meet you back at the office. That's the spirit. Arthur cheered. Always working. I walked out of the steakhouse, the cool autumn air hitting my face. I didn't go back to the office to work. I went back to execute. The office was empty. The lights hummed with the quiet energy of a Friday afternoon. I walked to my cubicle and packed my personal belongings into a single tote bag. A picture of my dog. A framed award from the Chamber of Commerce. My favorite mug. I sat down at my computer one last time. I opened my personal email draft folder. Inside was a message I had written and rewritten a dozen times. Subject: important. Update regarding your account management, dear client name. It has been my privilege to serve as your lead account manager for the past decade. Together, we have navigated challenges and celebrated record-breaking growth. I am writing to inform you that effective immediately, I am resigning from Miller and Associates. The direction of the firm no longer aligns with the level of personal service and integrity I believe you deserve. However, my commitment to your success remains unchanged. I have accepted a managing partner position at Apex Strategy, a firm dedicated to the values we share. I am concerned about the continuity of your current projects under the new management structure at Miller. If you wish to maintain our working relationship, please click the link below to sign a simplified transfer of representation form. We are ready to onboard you immediately with zero interruption to your service, regardless of your choice. Thank you for your trust over the years. Sincerely, Sarah. Added the BCC list. 82 contacts. The CEO of Omnicorp. The VP of Logistics at TriStar. Every decision maker who had my cell phone number saved as a favorite. I took a deep breath. My finger hovered over the mouse. I looked around the office, at the glass walls of Arthur's office, at the empty chair where Tyler sat playing on his phone. Expendable, I whispered. I hit send. I left my keycard on the desk. I walked to the elevator. I didn't look back. I was in my car driving toward the Apex office when the first call came through. It was the CEO of Omnicorp. Sarah, he boomed. I just got your email. Is it true? You're leaving? I've left, Jim, I said. Today. Thank God, he laughed. That kid they put on my account last week, Tyler? He called me Jim B.O. on a conference line. I was about to fire the firm anyway. Where do I sign? Check the link, Jim. By the time Arthur returned from his 3-hour lunch, 16 of our biggest clients had already electronically signed the transfer forms. I can only imagine the scene. Arthur walking in, perhaps a little tipsy from the wine, expecting to find his Greece hard at work. Instead, he found an empty desk and a phone that was lighting up like a Christmas tree. My phone began to vibrate incessantly. Arthur, Tyler. The HR director. Arthur Miller, missed call. Arthur Miller, missed call. Arthur Miller, missed call. Then came the text. Tyler. Hey Sarah. Where are the passwords for the TriStar account? The client is asking. Arthur. Sarah, pick up the phone. This is unprofessional. We need to talk. Arthur, you are in breach of contract. I will sue you into the ground. I turned my phone off. I went to dinner with Marcus. We ordered the expensive champagne. Monday morning was a bloodbath, according to a friend in accounting who was still inside. The chaos began at 8:30 a.m. Arthur stormed into the office, his face a mottled purple. He had spent the weekend receiving resignation emails from his clients, not just a few. The flood. By Monday morning, 65 of the 82 clients had signed with Apex. We had captured 90% of the revenue. Miller and Associates had gone from a thriving firm to a hollow shell in 72 hours. Arthur tried to fight. He sent a cease and desist letter via courier to my new office. It was full of bluster and threats. Citing the non-compete clause. My brother David drafted our response. It was a single page. It cited the state statute regarding overly broad non-competes and pointed out the conspicuous absence of a non-solicitation clause. It ended with a polite suggestion that Arthur save his legal fees for his bankruptcy filing. We never heard from his lawyer again. The collapse of Miller and Associates was swift and brutal. Without the revenue from the Big Five, Arthur couldn't make payroll. He laid off the entire VP layer, the sons and nephews, within 2 weeks. Tyler was the first to go. Rumors circulated that Arthur had to put the Porsche up for sale. He downsized the office, moving from the glass tower back to a sublet in the suburbs. The empire he had bragged about crumbled because he had removed the cornerstone to save a few bucks on concrete. 3 weeks later, my phone rang from an unknown number. I picked it up. Sarah? It was Tyler. He sounded small. Hi, Tyler. Look, I know things ended weird, he stammered. But Arthur let me go. And I heard Apex is hiring? I learned a lot from you, and I thought maybe... I let the silence hang there for a moment. I thought about the bagel platter. I thought about the senior advisor title. I thought about the grease. Tyler, I said gently. We're looking for people with experience. And frankly, for this role, you're expendable. I hung up. Am I the asshole? I've asked myself that question in the quiet moments. I destroyed a company. I cost people their jobs, not just the nepotism hires, but the receptionist, the janitor, the people who were innocent bystanders. But then I look at the new office at Apex. I look at the team we're building, a team based on merit, where the partners actually do the work. I look at the clients, who tell me they've never been happier with the service. Arthur forgot the fundamental rule of business. You don't buy loyalty. You earn it. And you certainly don't insult the person holding the keys to the vault. He called me the grease. He was right. Grease keeps the machine moving. But without it, the engine seizes, the gears grind to a halt, and the whole thing burns down. I didn't set the fire. I just took my grease and went somewhere else. The friction did the rest. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the story, click like and subscribe. Leave us a comment to tell us what you would have done in this situation.